Right now, there are no ships docked at the port of Seattle. Business has dropped off sharply. As you mentioned earlier, ports across the United States have seen a huge slowdown in activity. And now, thousands of dock workers and truck drivers are seriously worried about losing their jobs. When I see that, it tells me we're losing less money overall. For the past decade, we've had strong financial policies, and we plan to keep investing in infrastructure, digital systems, and our waterfront. But this is going to be a difficult time. Trump's trade tariffs have now spread to cover nearly all United States exports. New data on the supply chain shows that there are currently no container ships at all. According to Seattle port officials, in just the past week, 3 of the West Coast's busiest ports, Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Seattle, have nearly shut down. This has caused a 40% drop in United States import volume, leaving the docks almost completely empty. The effects have been immediate and harsh. By May 25th, nearly $50 billion in GDP had vanished in a matter of days, putting America's entire supply chain at risk. But even in the middle of this shipping crisis, there's still hope. A potential lifeline that could help revive the struggling retail industry is out there. And we're about to reveal what that is. Could President Trump's tough tariffs and the wider trade war be the real reason for this economic slowdown? And more importantly, is there a bold move that could end this gridlock and rescue United States retailers before it's too late? Stick with us. You don't want to miss the answer. Next week, we're expected to be down just over 35% compared to last year. On May 2nd, LAR predicted that between May 5th and May 11th, traffic would fall by 35% year over year. That prediction came true, showing just how deeply the China tariffs have affected things. Up the coast in Long Beach, port operators are expecting another major drop in shipments for May after cutting back volumes earlier in the month due to retaliatory tariffs. Seattle's port has gone entire days without a single ship arriving. Busy docks have turned into empty yards, with idle cranes and stacks of containers that no one's around to unload. Small trucking companies are taking the biggest hit. Many say their income has collapsed as freight routes are canceled and shipments are rerouted to avoid high tariffs. Since May 5th, nearly 400,000 containers have been pulled from Asia to North America shipping lanes, about 25% fewer than expected back in early March, before the new tariffs hit. So why all this chaos? United States officials slapped triple-digit tariffs on Chinese imports to try to bring manufacturing back home. But instead of returning production, importers canceled orders mid-shipment. Retailers stopped restocking. Shoppers saw higher prices at the checkout line. Products like electronics, home goods, and clothing are all more expensive now. Experts warn this price shock could raise inflation by about 3% in the months ahead. A 90-day break on the steepest tariffs may give a bit of relief. But once those duties return, brace yourself. Analysts are predicting a huge flood of delayed shipments, worse than anything we saw during the pandemic. Ships could be stuck offshore for weeks. Rail yards might overflow. Highways could jam as carriers rush to clear the backup. If Washington doesn't take fast action, cutting tariffs and investing in ports and factories, the supply chain won't just slow down. It could freeze up completely, costing tens of billions more in lost GDP. That might push some of America's biggest retailers right to the edge. In the last week of April 2025, bookings from China to the U.S. fell by 40%, dropping from 134,911 20-foot containers to just 81,239. That sudden drop isn't a fluke. It's the direct result of President Trump's early April tariff increase, meant to bring jobs back to America. By late April 2025, warehouses in Guangdong had emptied out, while U.S. retailers scrambled to find replacement goods in Vietnam and India, only to run into higher prices and longer delays. By May 15th, Walmart and Target were already warning that summer shelves could be empty, since their usual 2 to 3 month supply chains were torn apart by the new tariffs and canceled sailings. Down in Southern California, dozens of small shipping companies have already shut down as their revenues disappeared. Truckers and warehouse workers are losing hours, and honestly, losing hope. And back here at home, shoppers are starting to feel the impact directly. One-year U.S. inflation swaps jumped to 3.07% on March 14, 2025, the highest rate in 2 years, showing that the market expects inflation to stay around 3% this year. And it's already happening. Prices on laptops, furniture, even basic jeans have gone up since March. Store buyers are canceling product lines, cutting back on holiday orders, and holding onto their cash instead of signing new deals. At the same time, banks are getting stricter with credit for truckers and warehouse owners, worried about what happens after July. Analysts warn that if Congress allows the tariffs to snap back into place, the danger won't just be one massive port crisis. It'll be a slow, painful economic bleed. Consumers are spending less, businesses are freezing investments, and economic momentum is draining fast. Several importers have shared that they've nearly stopped shipping goods from China altogether. By early May 2025, cargo traffic at America's busiest port was projected to fall by 35%, a downturn that left thousands of dock workers anxious about their future. And it wasn't just Los Angeles. Ports in Long Beach and Seattle were also preparing for sharp declines as shipping lines steered away to avoid new, aggressive import tariffs. In less than a week, over 3,500 longshore workers were left without shifts, staring at idle cranes instead of bustling ships. For many families used to regular overtime, every lost day translated to missed rent payments, tuition fees, and more. Cafes and corner stores that once thrived on the daily rush of port employees saw sales nosedive, showing how a shipping slump can hurt entire neighborhoods. Meanwhile, small trucking companies across Southern California saw their income disappear almost instantly. Independent truckers who used to haul dozens of containers daily now found their rigs parked with no end in sight. With sailings canceled, their entire business models began to collapse. By mid-May, many of these small firms had gone bankrupt, unable to cover fuel, payroll, or insurance without consistent freight. Warehouse operators, too, were hit hard. Massive facilities designed for non-stop cargo flow were now half empty. Inventory stopped moving, staff hours were slashed, and the eerie silence set in. Across the ocean, factories in China's Guangdong province hit pause on production lines, emptied storage lots, and triggered a chain reaction U.S. retailers would soon feel. Here's a key moment. In early May 2025, major shipping players like MSC, Zim, and the Ocean Alliance canceled 6 weekly sailings between Asia and the U.S. They blamed fast-changing trade policies and a sudden drop in bookings. And the people paying the price? Everyday workers, truckers, dock hands, warehouse crews, the very ones who keep America's store shelves filled, now left in the dark by a tariff war they had no part in starting. Unless Washington rethinks these harsh duties and commits real funding to ports and manufacturing at home, this trade fight could quickly spiral into a serious employment crisis. And once families can't pay their bills and local businesses begin to shut down, the damage will stretch far beyond shipping delays. By May 9th, 2025, Reuters reported 6 major China to U.S. sailings were scrapped, cutting roughly 25,740 container slots each week, or about 1.3 million annually. Just 2 days later, Drury warned that blank sailings had already erased 20% of Asia West Coast capacity in April alone. The ports of LA and Long Beach were already feeling the pain, as more goods meant for these hubs were canceled. Another 12% drop happened in just the first week of May, the steepest decline since the pandemic. Fewer ships mean fewer paychecks for the businesses that connect imports to store shelves. Drayage companies around LA are now parking their trucks for days with no loads to haul. Dispatch boards that once lit up with job offers are now empty. Owners say a week without freight drains their cash reserves faster than any fuel price hike. Inland, warehouse managers are cutting shifts. Pallets meant for retailers aren't arriving. Conveyor belts stand still. Forklifts gather dust. Hourly workers who relied on overtime are now scrambling to pick up side jobs. Freight brokers say phones are ringing non-stop, but it's drivers begging for any run that covers gas and tolls. Some fleets have pivoted to domestic loads, only to find railroads scooping up what little volume remains. Others are giving up altogether, returning their operating licenses because insurance and lease costs just don't add up anymore. The damage spreads. Fewer trucks mean delayed pickups. Containers sit longer in terminals. Storage yards overflow. Some ports are even stacking containers in nearby parking lots, something we haven't seen since the worst of the pandemic. Retailers are now under pressure. Buyers who thought sourcing from Vietnam or India would be cheaper than China are realizing longer delivery times, and fewer sailings erase any tariff savings. Mid-size retailers are forced to make tough decisions, pay big premiums for limited shipping space, or accept empty shelves. Cash flow issues hit marketing budgets first, then payroll. Some store managers are preparing for rolling shutdowns if back-to-school restocks don't come in time. And the impact is visible on the streets. Cafes outside the Wilmington port now serve half the customers they did just 2 months ago. Repair shops that keep yard tractors running are stuck waiting for parts as suppliers ration inventory. Even food banks are reporting a rise in demand from families connected to freight and logistics. Experts warn that unless the U.S. moves quickly to ease tariffs and reinvest in domestic infrastructure, the current bottleneck could become permanent. Many family-owned trucking companies and regional warehouses might not survive past Labor Day, turning what looks like a slowdown into a full-blown crisis. One that could shave off as much as $50 billion from GDP. The takeaway is clear. When trucks stop moving, the entire economy starts to shut down. The so-called tariff pause now feels more like calm before a storm. Since Washington temporarily reduced duties to 30% on May 14th, importers have been rushing to bring in as much as they can before the full tariff wall returns on July 13th. You can already see this stockpiling. In March, U.S. imports of goods hit a record high of $346.8 billion, totaling $419 billion overall, according to Commerce Department figures on May 6th. And all those orders? They're on the water right now, scheduled to arrive in a tight 2-week window at the end of June. Carriers can make that work, because the spring downturn left dozens of ships sitting idle near Southeast Asia. Now, those engines are roaring back to life. Port managers in Los Angeles and Long Beach know what's coming next, and they're bracing for impact. Ships piling up offshore, yard space gone before sunrise, chassis lines wrapping around entire city blocks. Drayage firms that barely made it through April's slowdown are now swamped with more loads than they can handle, and not enough drivers to move them. Warehouses that are half empty today will become jammed the moment freight shows up out of order, forcing workers to reshuffle the same pallets again and again. Then the pendulum swings the other way. According to Reuters on May 9th, once full tariffs return, imports in July could drop 25% compared to last year. Retailers won't place new orders if it means eating triple-digit duties. This sharp swing from too much to too little is the classic whiplash effect. First you drown, then you starve. Small trucking companies suffer in both extremes. During the rush, congestion fines destroy their margins. After the rush, empty trailers bleed their cash flow dry. Then comes the social blow. Dock workers who rack up overtime in June might be jobless by August. Their extra paychecks vanish. Local cafes lose their breakfast regulars. Rent gaps widen for families already strained by over 3% inflation. Every day, a container sits in the yard adds $200 in storage fees. Those charges get passed directly onto product prices, just as parents start shopping for back-to-school supplies. There's still a way out. A phased tariff schedule, paired with emergency funding for ports and more chassis, could spread shipments more evenly throughout the season, rather than turning every arrival into a traffic jam. But time's nearly up. The bookings are confirmed, ships are sailing, the fuse is lit. If policymakers don't step in fast, the next GDP shock could easily exceed the initial $50 billion hit, leaving supply chains clogged and retailers with empty shelves. Tariffs didn't just clear out the ports, they stalled factory floors. When Washington hit Chinese imports with triple-digit tariffs on April 9, 2025, production across U.S. plants started slowing down. The Federal Reserve's April G17 data shows capacity use in manufacturing fell to 76.8%, the lowest since the 2022 dip and well below the long-term average. Idle machines mean fewer shifts. The Bring It Home plan still hasn't created the jobs it promised. For industrial investors and hedge funds, this downturn clashes with the narrative of resilience. From Ohio to Texas, tool and die shops say the same thing. You can't swap out Chinese parts overnight. Certifying new suppliers takes time. Instead of hiring, many firms are cutting weekend shifts and overtime, waiting for U.S. components that still aren't available. That gap, high tariffs but no investment to match, squeezes both ends of the supply chain. Imports are too expensive, but American factories can't scale up fast enough. Production stalls, store shelves run thin. Right now, a 90-day pause on duties is helping retailers rush their summer orders. But by July 13th, when the tariffs return in full, purchasing managers say they'll simply stop placing new orders. The ports overwhelmed in June could be dead quiet by August. Truckers go from congestion fines to trailer bankruptcies in one quarter. Shoppers feel the pain in both directions. Higher prices when parts cost more, and empty racks when supply freezes. Every drop in manufacturing use echoes down the chain: fewer exports, fewer shifts, less local spending. Economists warn this will continue until policy changes. What's needed? Phase the duties. Link each phase to actual factory build-outs, fast-track automation grants. That would turn tariffs from a blunt tool into a smart one. But if things stay as they are, every quiet machine, every still conveyor belt, and every empty shelf will be proof that trade policy meant to protect U.S. industry may be slowly strangling it. Small businesses were supposed to benefit from Washington's tough trade stance. Instead, they're among the first to fall. A sharp drop in shipping capacity with no backup plan could hammer family-run carriers and neighborhood warehouses. What starts as a delay in deliveries could grow into a full-blown supply chain crisis, risking tens of billions in GDP. Fast forward 6 weeks, and the pain is everywhere. Operators who once depended on Chinese fasteners, chipsets, and packaging are now looking at invoices loaded with triple-digit tariffs. They can't absorb the price hikes. But passing them on risks pushing customers straight into the arms of Amazon Basics or Walmart's private label brands. Small businesses without global sourcing lifelines are bleeding out. A bottle maker in Vermont warned that these new tariffs could slash their sales and force them to shut down one of their production lines. Over in Indiana, a gasket supplier cut its second shift after rubber spiked by 60 cents per pound. Down in Texas, a circuit board company paused a new launch when 4-cent capacitors suddenly started arriving at 9. Protection was the promise. But the very industries the tariffs were meant to protect, metalwork, electronics, specialty plastics, don't have the domestic resources to operate at full capacity. Margins disappear, time slips away, and suppliers further up the chain watch their purchase orders dry up. That drag sends a ripple back through the ports. With fewer outgoing shipments, rail cars sit idle, and regional trucking firms face another hit to their cash flow. What was meant to be a protective wall has become a tightening vice. Major corporations absorb the impact by shifting production to Vietnam or negotiating bulk deals. But for the small machine shop on the corner, the only options are to cut staff, hold back on marketing, and hope the next delivery makes it through under the reduced tariff rate. If the full tariffs snap back into place on July 13th, many small business owners say they'll stop placing new orders entirely until prices ease. That kind of freeze could pull even more cargo out of circulation, turning June's backup into eerily empty docks by August. Economists call it the paradox of protectionism. Hit too hard, and you end up damaging the very industries you wanted to defend. Without help, like grants or a gradual rollout, small firms will keep absorbing losses they can't make back, and the cracks in the supply chain will keep widening. Tonight's bottom line is harsh. America's biggest ports are running on half power. Imports have plunged by 40%, and nearly $50 billion in GDP has already disappeared. Big retailers are rationing shelf space. Trucking companies are folding. And a pile of unsold goods is just floating offshore. All of it triggered by a steep tariff wall that went up faster than any U.S. factory could ramp up to replace it. Best case? Washington eases the tariffs, pumps money into ports, machinery, and worker training, and the supply chain starts breathing again by the holidays. Worst case? The full duties return in July, terminals jam up, stores miss the back-to-school rush, and the economic toll blows past that $50 billion hole. So here's the final question for you. Should lawmakers scale back the tariff war now, or double down and gamble that domestic manufacturing somehow catches up? Let us know what you think in the comments, because the next move from Washington could be the difference between a short slowdown or a complete shutdown.